My name is Claire Reynolds. I'm 28 years old, and I work in a small administrative office in the center of Brookhaven. For the past 5 years, I've been married to Ethan Ward, a 30-year-old delivery driver who works for a local shipping company. We live in a small, sunlit apartment on the south side of the city. Nothing fancy, nothing luxurious, but warm enough to feel like home. Ethan has always been the steady heart of our little world. He's gentle, patient, and thoughtful in ways that don't draw attention. He cooks dinner every night, even after long hours on the road. He makes ginger tea when I'm sick, and he leaves short handwritten notes on the fridge. Simple messages like "drive safe today" or "you've got this." Those tiny gestures used to make me smile without thinking. Our life together was simple, peaceful, predictable. And for a long time, I believed that was enough. I believed I was content. But recently something shifted, not in Ethan, but in me. A quiet discomfort, a subtle comparison, a small seed of doubt. I kept telling myself I still had a stable marriage. Until those tiny comparisons began slipping into my mind, one after another. Before I ever realized something inside me was drifting, our life together was beautifully ordinary. Every morning, Ethan woke up before I did. He made simple breakfasts, toast, eggs, sometimes a slice of fruit if we still had any left. He would kiss my forehead gently before heading out on his old motorcycle, the one he'd been using for more than 6 years. I used to admire how he never complained about it. In the evenings, we cooked dinner side by side. It became our quiet ritual after long workdays. I chopped vegetables while Ethan seasoned the food, telling me small stories about the people he met on his delivery routes. He had a way of turning everyday moments into something amusing, and I loved listening to him laugh more than anything else. On weekends, we walked along the Riverlight Park trails, bought vanilla ice cream, and talked about tiny dreams. Nothing grand, nothing extravagant. Maybe a short trip to the mountains. Maybe repainting the living room. Maybe getting a new coffee maker when the old one finally gave up. I used to tell my best friend that I married the kindest man in the world. And it was true in every way that mattered. We weren't wealthy, but we never argued about money. We made do together. And I believed that was enough. But then things around me began to change. My co-workers showed off new houses, sparkling cars, expensive vacations. They talked about anniversary gifts that cost more than our monthly rent. Their stories made me pause, made me compare. Slowly, quietly, a question began forming inside me. Why can't Ethan give me those things? I didn't realize it then, but those comparisons were loosening each stitch of the marriage we had spent years knitting together, one thread at a time. Those tiny comparisons that once felt harmless slowly grew into something heavier, something sharp enough to bruise the peace in my heart. I began noticing things I had never cared about before. One morning, I looked down at Ethan's shoes, those worn-out sneakers he had been using for nearly 2 years, and instead of smiling at his simplicity the way I used to, I felt embarrassed. Embarrassed by my own husband. "Why don't you buy new ones?" I asked. He simply laughed, the way he always did when he thought something didn't matter. "These still work just fine," he said. But to me, at that moment, they didn't feel fine. They felt like proof that he couldn't give me the life others had. Every month, I saw my salary, about $5,000. Then I looked at Ethan's, barely $2,200. Out of that, he sent $1,000 to support his elderly parents. The rest, he handed to me without hesitation, saying, instead of appreciating that, I grew irritated. "Why don't you try getting a better job? Why don't you start a small business? Are you planning to deliver packages forever?" Ethan always answered calmly, "I'm comfortable with my work. It gives me time for us." But that only made me more frustrated. His gentleness felt like passivity. His steadiness felt like a lack of ambition. I didn't know then how unfair I was being. Then small changes began to appear, changes I didn't understand. Ethan started coming home later than usual. He ate less, spoke less, and sighed more. When I looked at him, he always forced a smile, as if trying to hide how tired he was. I thought he was just being lazy or careless, or simply unwilling to change. I had no idea that behind that silence, he was trying to carry something heavy, something he didn't want me to see. One night, he came home long after midnight. His shirt smelled of oil, and his hands were shaking slightly. "Why are you late?" I demanded. He paused for a moment, then said quietly, "I had to finish some extra work." I didn't believe him. In my mind, Ethan had become someone who wasn't trying hard enough, someone who didn't deserve the dreams I wanted. I didn't know I was wrong. I didn't know that my disappointment, spoken and unspoken, had pushed Ethan toward a decision that would unravel everything. Our routine, our peace, and even his own strength. I didn't realize that the crack in our marriage didn't start from Ethan. It started from me. That night is burned into my memory like a scar. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I heard the slow, dragging footsteps outside our apartment door. When I opened it, Ethan was leaning against the wall, his shirt damp with sweat, his eyes unfocused. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm just a little tired." Something inside me snapped. "Tired? Do you even know how long I've been waiting? Or were you busy with that terrible job again?" He didn't defend himself. For the first time since I married him, Ethan just stared at the floor and said nothing. That silence made me even angrier. I launched into everything that had been building inside me for months. I talked about money, about ambition, about the way other husbands were progressing in their careers. I told him he wasn't growing, that he wasn't trying hard enough, that I felt like I was carrying the weight of our future alone. Ethan didn't yell back. He didn't blame me. He just whispered, "I'm trying my best." But those words only fueled my frustration. Trying? Then why are we still struggling? Why are you still doing a job that pays so little? Why can't you be more like? I didn't finish the sentence, but he knew exactly what I meant. That was when something inside him broke. Ethan slowly sank onto the couch, his shoulders trembling. His voice was barely audible. I took another job," he said. "At a restaurant. I work there after my delivery shift. Until 2 a.m. Every day." My breath froze. "Why?" I asked, though a part of me already knew. He lifted his eyes. Tired red, full of something I couldn't read at the time. "Because you deserve more. Because I want you to be proud of me. Because I want to give you the things you dream about." For a moment, the world went silent around us. But instead of feeling touched, instead of feeling gratitude, I felt something messy. Guilt mixed with anger, pride mixed with denial. I told myself he didn't need to do that. I told myself he was being dramatic. I told myself I wasn't responsible. But deep down I knew. My silence after his confession felt heavier than any argument. Ethan looked at me as if waiting for me to say something, anything, that could ease the weight he was carrying. I said nothing. And that silence, that cold, painful silence, became the first thread that truly unraveled everything that came next. Everything collapsed just a few days later. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner when a thud echoed through the apartment. Heavy, sharp, unmistakably wrong. My heart stopped. I ran toward the bathroom, pushed the door open, and froze. Ethan was lying on the floor, his skin pale, his breathing shallow, his hands trembling weakly. For a moment, I couldn't even scream. Then panic took over, and I grabbed my phone with shaking fingers, calling for an ambulance as tears blurred my vision. At the hospital, time moved strangely, slow, yet suffocating. I sat in a cold chair, hugging myself, waiting for the doctor to come out. When he finally approached, his expression was serious. Ethan was severely exhausted. Chronic lack of sleep, dehydration, physical collapse from overwork. His body had simply given up. Hearing those words felt like someone had pulled the ground out from under me. I had complained about him being late, about him being tired, about him not trying hard enough. And all this time, he was pushing himself further than anyone should. When I was finally allowed to see him, Ethan was asleep, hooked up to fluids, his face peaceful but fragile. I sat beside him, holding the edge of the blanket, and a wave of guilt washed over me so strong it stole my breath. I realized then. I had blamed the one man who had never stopped loving me. I had asked for more when he was already giving everything he had. I had been chasing things that didn't matter while ignoring the love right in front of me. When Ethan woke up and saw me crying, he managed a weak smile. "Don't worry, Claire," he whispered. "I just wanted to make you proud." That single sentence shattered me. For the first time in months, I finally saw the truth with painful clarity. It wasn't Ethan who needed to change. It was me. I took a few days off from work to stay by Ethan's side. For the first time in months, I wasn't rushing, complaining, or comparing. I was simply present. When Ethan was discharged, still weak but smiling softly, I held his hand all the way home. And for the first time, he didn't try to pretend he was fine. He leaned into me, trusting me to guide him. That evening, while helping him lie down on the couch, I said gently, "Ethan, I want you to quit the second job. And if you need to, take a break from the delivery work too." He looked at me, truly surprised. "You mean it?" "But I thought." I squeezed his hand. "I don't need anything except you healthy. Nothing else matters." Something shifted between us at that moment. Something fragile but powerful, like a cracked wall finally letting in the sunlight. From then on, our life began to change in quiet, meaningful ways. I cooked dinner more often, learning his favorite dishes instead of assuming he would always be the one to take care of the meals. We cleaned the apartment together on weekends, turning chores into moments of laughter rather than burdens. And every night, we talked. Not about money. Not about careers. Not about what we lacked. We talked about us. I apologized, truly apologized, for the invisible pressure I had placed on him, the comparisons I allowed to poison our home, the blind expectations that had pushed him past his limits. Ethan didn't blame me. He never had. He simply held my hand and said, "We learned something, and that's enough." But the real change, the deeper, lasting one, happened inside me. For the first time, I saw Ethan fully. Not the income. Not the job title. Not the worn-out shoes or the old motorcycle. I saw the man who stayed beside me through every illness. The man who whispered encouragement whenever I doubted myself. The man who worked until his body collapsed just to make me proud. The man who gave love freely, quietly, consistently. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't glamorous. But he was mine. And he was good. As I stopped comparing him to others, gratitude began to grow, slowly at first, then fiercely. I realized how much peace Ethan brought into my life, how strong our relationship was beneath the noise of my own insecurity. Our marriage didn't just survive the crisis. It deepened. It solidified. It became something stronger, something chosen, not taken for granted. Looking back, I often think, the greatest luxury I could ever have was already sitting across from me at our small kitchen table, smiling softly, asking if I wanted more tea. After the collapse and everything that followed, Ethan slowly recovered. His energy returned bit by bit, and the shadows under his eyes faded. But the biggest change wasn't in his health, it was in the way we looked at each other. There was no more pretending, no more hiding, no more pressure. Just honesty, understanding, and a kind of tenderness I had long forgotten to appreciate. I share this story now as a reminder, not only to myself, but to anyone listening. Happiness is not measured by income. Love is not measured by gifts. And the worth of a person lies in their heart, not in their wallet. Ethan was never rich. He never wore expensive watches or drove a new car. But he gave me something far more valuable than anything money could buy: peace, kindness, loyalty, and love without conditions. There was a moment when I almost lost sight of that. I almost let comparisons steal the joy in my own home. If I had continued walking down that path, I would have lost the one person who had always chosen me, every single day. But life gave me a chance to open my eyes before it was too late. And I learned something I'll never forget. True happiness isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about learning to cherish the person who keeps showing up for you, even when life gets hard. So now I ask you, if you were in my place, would you value kindness over material things? What matters more to you in a relationship? Share your thoughts below. And if you want to hear more emotional stories that help you practice English in a natural and meaningful way, don't forget to subscribe and watch the next video.